Hi, everybody. I know it's noon and we're about ready to get started with the webinar. We're just going to give probably another 60 seconds for other people to join, and then we will get started. Anybody that would like to see a recording, we are recording this and we'll distribute the recording afterwards. So we'll just, like I said, we'll give everybody like probably another 30, 60 seconds to join. All right. In the interest of time, why don't we get started? And once again, we are recording this webinar, so anyone else that is to join after the fact will get a copy of the recording. Devon will be sending that out. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items and introduction. My name is Jeff Moser. I am the CTO for Cordicate IT. My responsibility for Cordicate IT is in developing the technology direction of both Cordicate internally and our strategy for customers, as well as a strategy for customers. So this is an important topic today, and it's one that several customers have reached out about or have asked about, and that is if I'm done with VMware and I'm done with Broadcom, what else are my options? How else do I proceed with my virtualization environment, whether it's on premises or in the cloud? And I think that we've had several conversations with a lot of customers about the cloud options when it comes to Microsoft Azure and how to exceed with those, how to move forward with those, how to migrate off of VMware to those. But I know we have several customers that do not have the option that they can be completely offloaded to the cloud, and that's understandable. In all honesty, Cordicate is not a full cloud company. We are still a hybrid and slash data center company. And so having additional options that are available to our customers that allow them to maintain on-premise infrastructure while utilizing cloud or even just kind of independently are still important. And so we wanted to have this webinar to kind of talk about what we're working with outside of VMware. And specifically, I think that relies a lot around Microsoft HCI, whether it be Hyper-V, Azure Stack, some of the other options, but we're still very heavily aligned with Dell on a lot of those options and other manufacturers as well. But I think that this is really kind of focused on like the Microsoft HCI options that are available for Dell. Today, we're going to have a presentation from Scott Wells. Scott Wells is a solutions architect at Arrow. For those of you that don't know who Arrow is both a partner and a distributor of Cordicate. We kind of consider them part of our team or an extension of our team when it comes to technical resources. And as a distributor, they're also an extension of the Dell team. So Scott Wells is very, very knowledgeable on everything that Dell is doing, from the topics that we're talking about today, specifically around Microsoft HCI, as well as like, the whole beyond Broadcom conversation. But I think that it'll be a good and educational conversation for everybody, and hopefully everybody gets something out of this. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. I know there is a giveaway for this event. That giveaway will be announced in the next couple of days. I also know that there is a survey that we would like to send out after this event. Please make sure that when you receive that survey that you fill it out. It gives us good feedback on things that you like to see, things that you don't like to see, anything you liked about this event, anything you hated about this event. Feel free to be completely honest. I mean, everything really helps us build more education and better events for the future for all of our customers and staff. So at that note, I'm going to pass this over to Scott Wells. And Scott, please feel free to get started.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Yep, as Jeff mentioned, my name is Scott Wells. I'm a solution architect that's Dell focused from Arrow. So background on me, I spent 15 and a half years at Dell Technologies as a technical sales representative, solution architect, system consultant. Most of the time I was a solution architect for Dell, covering solutions like HCI solutions and storage and the whole data center portfolio from a Dell standpoint. So, and I've spent the last 4 years at Arrow focused on the Dell portfolio very much all of the data center solutions from a Dell standpoint. So I have almost 20 years of experience covering the Dell portfolio. So very, very familiar with Dell and Dell solutions. Um, and today, with some of the challenges in the industry that Jeff kind of outlined, we're talking about Microsoft HCI and potentially getting beyond the Broadcom solutions. So some of the ways I'm going to kind of word stuff, I'll kind of tilt it towards VMware versus Microsoft. And when we talk about Microsoft HCI, we're specifically talking about Azure Stack HCI. So what is Azure Stack HCI? So Azure Stack HCI, you may have remembered kind of Microsoft's first attempt into hyperconverged infrastructure. That was with Storage Spaces Direct, which was an evolution of Storage Spaces, which was their kind of their direct attached virtual stands solution that was somewhat hyperconverged, but it really required on having a separate storage device. And then like in 2016, when the 2016 Windows Server, they launched Storage Spaces Direct, which was their first hyper-converged infrastructure solution, which kind of didn't require the additional direct attached JBOD to be attached to a server. You could utilize all the resources inside of an x86 server to set up the redundancies, the resiliencies, high availability, all the stuff you've come to know from an HCI solution. And the evolution of 2022, actually, I think it was 2019 when they officially launched Azure Stack HCI. And then in 2022, it was more mainstream. Azure Stack HCI became what was Storage Spaces Direct. And then they launched it within the Windows Server operating system. The Windows Server operating system, you can purchase all the components of Azure Stack HCI that we're going to talk about. And that is still a CapEx approach. So meaning that you can purchase it all up front. And it not being an ongoing consumption model where you have to pay a per core or what they call an Azure local host fee on a monthly basis. And from a consumption standpoint, you can still consume resources from the Azure public cloud utilizing Azure Arc. It's just in this approach, from an upfront cost, from an operating system standpoint, and from a local resources perspective, all of it's procured upfront, as opposed to a minimal cost from an OS standpoint, which would be with Azure Stack HCI OS. Azure Stack HCI OS is an actual operating system that Microsoft has kind of moved the public cloud consumption to on-premise. So it's more of an on-premise consumption model and does require a monthly service fee. It's like $10 per physical core. The fee is for what they call host service and doesn't include any guest VM licensing. However, if you're eligible for Azure the hybrid benefit, which certain enterprise agreements, you can potentially waive that fee, but it is a subscription model. But either way, if you consume it as an upfront CapEx expense through Windows operating system, or whether you consume it as an ongoing consumption model with an Azure Stack HCI OS, the components that come with the Azure Stack HCI, either as the Azure Stack HCI OS or within the Windows operating system, You get Hyper-V virtualization, which is basically traditional server virtualization. Uh, Storage spaces direct, which is kind of the HCI solution, which again, it used to be called the whole the whole HCI solution used to be called storage spaces direct, but don't confuse that. Now this is really the storage spaces, or the storage allocation, the pool allocation of the storage on the back end, and the policy base and the resiliency, how you set up the resiliency as far as any erasure coding or any kind of resiliency that you set up within the cluster. Storage spaces is that component within the software stack from an Azure Stack HCI OS standpoint. And then you do have, it's not required, but you can take part with the software-defined networking, which is really extending some of the network solution, network security groups, VNets, things of that nature, networking, the networking capabilities that you get within Azure Stack, either the ARM or however you consume Azure. You get those same networking capabilities on premise, or let me preface, a lot of the same capabilities that you get in the Azure cloud on premise. So that's the Azure stack that's either within the Windows operating system or within Azure Stack HCI OS. There's also another part, and we'll talk about it, which is called Azure Stack Arc, or Azure Arc Hybrid Services, which extends the services from the Azure public cloud, or many of them, from the Azure public cloud to on-premise. So,
Scott, it's
sure.
probably important to note, just for our small business, SME, and nonprofit customers, that the Azure hybrid benefit for Windows Server extends past EA. It is available with certain CSP offerings. We do have the ability to sell Windows Server as a subscription that would give customers the ability to get the hybrid benefit with both on-premise Windows Server as with the cloud. And for nonprofit licensing, because Microsoft has not enacted that for CSP yet, open value is still an option. We do have the ability to sell Windows Server, SQL Server, etc., with software assurance, which does give you the Azure hybrid benefit. So don't think that this is just related to EAs. This is actually relevant to all customers.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. That's a very good call. So, ways to purchase Azure Stack HCI, and this is really from a Dell standpoint. The ways to purchase it from a Dell perspective, you can buy it today as an x86 server and purchase the operating system, so Windows Server operating system. In day one, from a deployment standpoint, it's really up to you to kind of install it on the x86 server. So you can have the Windows Server. You can either have it you could have it OEM installed from a Dell standpoint, but they're not going to set up. I mean, the operating system itself will be installed, but the actual configuration of the Azure Stack HCI portion of the operating system would not be installed. You could pay for additional installation through Cordicate or through Dell and have that configured. That could definitely be done, but it's not ideal, because really whoever sets it up still has to determine compatibility of the hardware and the software. You still have to make sure that the specific driver, the specific firmware, that the hardware components, just because it matches the operating system doesn't mean it's going to match the requirements from an Azure Stack HCI OS standpoint, or Azure Stack HCI software components within the operating system. You really have to perform your own interoperability testing, and any upgrades from the software and hardware. You can still get a lot of the upgrades from a Microsoft standpoint, but in general, across the stack, you would have to make sure that the software and the hardware all stay in the same version. So that's one way to purchase it. the it's not really ideal from an HCI standpoint, because HCI is really kind of picky as far as, you know, making sure that all the components within the ecosystem all kind of line up and are supported for the specific HCI. So the next option is the Azure Stack integrated node. And this is really, if you're familiar with ready nodes, this is hardware and software that's been blessed by both the software company and the specific OEM. In this case, we're talking about Dell, right? So day one, again, there's no wizard-driven deployments or updates over the time from an update standpoint. But you do purchase, unless you purchase the information, or I should say, on day one, the platform is certified from a firmware standpoint, from a BIOS perspective, from everything within the software stack, that it's going to be certified with the hardware, so that when you go to deploy it, or the deployment team goes to deploy it, you're not troubleshooting, you're not performing interoperability, you're not having to test to make sure that all the individual software drivers, etc., is all up to speed for that specific Azure Stack HCI OS. It is certified to be deployed day one. And then from a software update standpoint, and from a hardware, you still have to kind of update them separately over the life cycle of this system. So, when Dell launches an update, or Microsoft launches a software update, it's kind of up to you to making sure that the full stack between the hardware and the software stays on the same version, so there's not drift between the hardware and software over the life cycle of the system. So if either part of the ecosystem is out of alignment, if there's a driver that's off, if there's the firmware is not in the correct version, there are potential challenges. There's potential risk of downtime as far as when you go to do an actual update. So it's not as ideal, but Dell does a pretty good job between the two. Plus, from a tech support standpoint, it's absolutely supported for upgrade assistance, and when it's time to go to upgrade, to go through tech support to actually set that up. So, the best and fast and easiest way to kind of deploy Azure Stack HCI, and to ensure that over the life cycle of the system, would be the third option, which is the Microsoft Azure Cloud Platform, which is basically you choose a specific validated state. Day one, it is wizard driven, and we're going to get into a little bit more of the details. So when we talk about that, we're still talking about layering all the features and functionalities from an Azure Stack standpoint. The Hyper-V virtualization, source spaces, drags, software-defined networking. Today, from a cloud platform standpoint, it is Azure Stack HCI OS, which is, if you remember, is that consumption model. So it is an ongoing subscription model that you can purchase. The ready nodes, or x86, are the two ways to consume the Windows operating system from a CapEx purchase standpoint. And again, everything that we're talking about here from an Azure Stack HCI OS can be purchased as a part of a ready node, or it can be purchased as a part of the operating system. The one part, the piece on the screen that's does not come with that, is the Cloud Platform Manager VM, Apex Cloud Platform Foundation software, which is the key to the fastest way to kind of deploy it and making it wizard driven. So what you get with the Apex Cloud Platform Foundation software, again, it's really the fastest path from a installation standpoint, because it does make the deployment wizard driven. Automation, and we'll talk about some of the automation that's included, but there's automation and deployment, automation as a part of the lifecycle management, then integrated support and serviceability, which we'll get into some more, and then really it really simplifies the process of having API integration into Microsoft Azure, um, and utilizing Azure services with Azure Arc, and being able to migrate from on-premise to off-premise, and to use familiar on-premise tools to connect to off-premise tool, or to public cloud tools that are in Azure, like Dell, the monitor, insights, things like that, Azure policy, all of those, to extend all of those services to on-premise. Um, so some of the benefits, we talk about the integrations with Azure. Um, One of the big ones is from an updating standpoint. Updating's become very much wizard driven. So when it is time, when you talk about with a ready node or with x86, there's two separate updates. Dell launches an update from a hardware standpoint. You update the hardware. From a software standpoint, Microsoft launches an update to the operating system. You update the software with the Apex Cloud platform. Both are updated at the same time, and Dell's made the commitment. It's one of the commitments they haven't been able to make with Microsoft. If we have any VxRail folks on the phone, people who've utilized VxRail, which is basically a comparative solution from Dell, that would be the VMware stack, would be um, uh, you know updates for like the whole package. So VMware would launch an update, say for 7.0 or for 8.0, it would be, potentially 3 months later before Dell would be able to launch a package to update both the software and hardware from a VxRail standpoint. And it had to do a lot with when VMware made the software updates available to Dell. But both Microsoft and Dell have made the commitment to have same day updates. So within that same day, as soon as Microsoft launches updates, Dell will have an update package available for the Apex Cloud platform. So you'll be able to update both the software and the hardware on the same day. Um, and that's again, that's updating the full stack from a software and a hardware standpoint to ensure over the life cycle of the system, there's no drift. Also, the integration from a monitoring standpoint, again, it extends to Azure monitoring tools. Um, from an Azure monitor standpoint, um, it creates a specific workbook, and allows you to kind of to update and manage both, or I should say, monitor and provide insights on both the hardware that's on premise and the software that's on premise, as well as the services that are being utilized, in the cloud. Um, you know, you can see the on-premise monitoring and the on-premise insights in the as a part of the Apex event monitoring. Um, and then from a cloud standpoint, you would still see all your resources and whatnot through the Azure Monitor insights, that it's either within ARM or however you procure it. Um, so and then furthermore, you get enhanced management features with the Microsoft Azure Cloud, or with the Dell Apex Cloud platform. Um, Apex AI IOPS. If you're familiar with Cloud IQ, it's similar to that, and I've got some screenshots of the Apex AI IOPS that kind of walk through it. But it very much is analytics from a health standpoint. You can get a snapshot of all either your individual or as a whole, from a cluster standpoint, so you can kind of view the whole cluster, and the health check for each of the individual nodes, to make sure that it's utilizing best practices from an implementation standpoint and a deployment perspective. It also, the Apex AI Ops makes recommendations as far as adjusting and remediation. So if there are potential changes that can better secure, better set up the platform from a performance standpoint, Apex AI Ops will make those recommendations. You also have connection directly into Dell support through the Cloud Platform Manager, which enables, from the tech support integration, you can um, easily submit log collections. There's a call home feature so that Dell can proactively reach out in the event there are potential challenges with the cluster. Um, Automated support case creation. If there is a potential challenge, there are automations kind of built in to create a case and to alert Dell support. So it's a much better support experience. And then remote access in the event that you know if Dell support needs to log in, make any changes, it helps. It makes it in such a way where it's easy for them to access the system in the event of any kind of tech support creation or case creation. Um, and then the cloud platform, as you can see, it has its main purpose, though, is really, as you kind of mentioned, from a lifecycle updating standpoint, from day one implementation, and then, from a wizard update standpoint, as soon as there's an update available, you'll see an update package within the Cloud Platform Manager to be able to, when you click on it, it'll kick off the beginning of the wizard from an updating standpoint. And again, it updates the full stack from the operating system, and the software stack from a Hyper-V standpoint to Storage Space and Direct to the networking piece. All of that's kind of updated. And the Azure Resource Bridge, which we'll talk about here in a second. Again, that's all a part of the stack, and the hardware too as well. There are additional API integrations from an iDirect standpoint. If you're familiar with the integrated Dell Remote Access Card, there are additional features and functionalities that you can take advantage of from a remote access standpoint to access the cluster. That's just really familiar from a PowerEdge standpoint, and the platform. Even though it's the Dell Apex cloud platform, or Azure Stack HCI cloud platform, it's still built on the commonality of Dell PowerEdge servers. So if you're a Dell PowerEdge server customer today, you'll be extremely familiar with the platforms, and we'll talk more about the infrastructure here in a second. So from a snapshot standpoint, you can kind of see that from Apex AI Ops, it really you get health scores and recommendations, and it goes into detail within the robot shop to talk about potential performance issues, application observability as far as being able to see certain workloads from a integration perspective, and be able to point to things like latency. Um, that's really one of the biggest benefits. You can kind of track and see your performance of how workloads are kind of performing. There are multiple you know data solutions or data analytics and insights that it provides. This is just kind of a snapshot, and you can see uh, just from the snapshots, it provides quite a bit of data for you to kind of best set up and best configure, best manage the system, both from a software and a hardware standpoint. And then, as I've mentioned a couple times, Azure Arc Hybrid Services. So, our hybrid services, this gives you the capabilities either within the Windows operating system. Today in 2022, from understanding in 25, it's supposed to be activated by default. Within 22, you have to activate Azure Arc Hybrid Services, but it's there to be activated. Um, However, in the Azure Stack HCI OS, which is what today the cloud platform only ships with, within the cloud platform, the cloud platform, Azure Arc Hybrid Services is enabled by default. So everything that we talk about, um, so with everything within this, um, within the capabilities from an Azure. sorry, get back here from this stack, from basically setting up the Arc resource bridge, um, having the capability from an Azure Arc. Uh, it's really, when they talk about the resource bridge, it's almost like a marketplace, that allows for you to kind of access the specific resources that are available. And I'll show you all the individual resources that are available that you can kind of take part of on premise, while at the same time kind of having your on-premise environment still available. So from a Hyper-V standpoint, storage spaces, software-defined network, and all the software stack that we talked about from an on-premise perspective, um, you can still utilize that. You can also, from a call out standpoint, if anybody's used Azure Migrate to migrate virtual machines from on-premise to the Azure public cloud, you can use Azure Migrate also to migrate to Azure Local, which is, I think Microsoft will eventually call it Azure Stack HCI. Granted, this is just speculation. We'll call it Azure Local eventually, but when they talk about Azure Local, they're talking about Azure Stack HCI. So Azure Stack HCI today, you can use Azure Migrate to migrate virtual machines from, say, VMware to the Azure solution, and that's either, again, a Windows operating system, um, with Azure Stack HCI deployed, or as a part of the Azure Stack HCI OS. So all of this, everything that we're talking about, extending the Azure public cloud services to on premise, that is a function, or really a part of the Azure hybrid services that allow for that. Azure Migrate is separate from that. It's a separate capability, but Azure Migrate, you can use it to migrate to on-premise as well as to the Azure public cloud. So from a full stack standpoint, if we look at it to encompass the Azure Arc, the Azure Arc hybrid services. Let me just extend this all out. One too many. So from an Azure Kubernetes standpoint, you can extend that. The actual hybrid services itself is built on Azure Kubernetes services, but you can extend Azure AKS to on-premise. Machine learning capabilities, data services like Cosmos DB, Azure DB, Data Lake, any, uh, just about any data service from a Microsoft standpoint can be extended on-premise. Any of the SQL, um, uh, from a monitor perspective, or Azure Policy, Azure Insights. Again, Dell has integration with these, but you can also extend very much all of the policies from an Azure Policy standpoint, as well as Azure Monitor, and Azure Insights, Defender, from a security standpoint, um, and then updates. A lot of this has integrations from a Dell perspective, but also, the Azure Hybrid Services allows you to kind of connect much of these to any of the on-premise virtual machines. But note, anything on here, you know, is consumption based, just like the Azure public cloud. From whether it's part of the Windows operating system, all of this requires an Azure subscription, and it's all consumption based, because you're still consuming it from the public cloud. It's just being extended to on premise. But everything from Azure Virtual Machine to Azure Kubernetes, Azure Kubernetes services or data services, or the monitoring policy, all of this can be extended on premise, and within the same pane of glass, you can still see the or access the Azure ARM to access all your resources that are under your subscriptions within Azure ARM. You can use PowerShell, you can use um, Bash or however you consume it, you can still consume all of your Azure ARM resources too as well. And this kind of just extends it, kind of splits it up into two subscriptions. Your on-premise subscription consumption versus your subscription consumption that's in the Azure public cloud. But everything is still uh, available for the most part from an Azure public cloud standpoint is on premise and the Azure Arc hybrid services, which is basically like a marketplace, allows you to kind of access all of those capabilities. Uh, so so to talk about the infrastructure. So from a Dell infrastructure standpoint, there's two ways to purchase it. Again, the integrated system is just like if you've heard Ready Node or if you've purchased or consumed vSAN Ready Nodes in the past, the integrated system is basically a Ready Node, right? It's hardware that is certified from a component standpoint and blessed by both Microsoft and Dell um, to be at the right level from a driver firmware, etc, compatibility, interoperability from a hardware, networking components, um, and one step further too as well. The tech support is specific. So if you call into Dell for tech support for either the integrated or Premier, the part of the service tag and support tag that's included as a part of either the Ready Node or as a part of the Premier solution within the cloud platform. It routes you to a specific SKU or a specific queue, I should say, that manages specifically Microsoft Azure Stack HCI. So and Dell will support the full stack from a support perspective. So you're calling just Dell in either instance. Um, but it is another level from a Premier solution because you do get the call home functionality with Premier, where you do not get the call home functionality with the integrated system. Um, so you do still have integrations from a support assist standpoint with iDRAC with integrated systems. With the Premier solution, it is just more of an automation and proactive maintenance from a call home perspective, where integrated system is more traditional PowerEdge server with pro support. Both are pro support, but Premier Solution is just the next level of automation, integration, updating, faster deployment, faster updates, faster upgrades. Um, so, but what's available today from an infrastructure perspective? So the MC660, um, if you're familiar with the Dell platforms, the Dell PowerEdge platforms, it is built on the R660 platform, which is the Dell R is in for rack. The six means 1U, up to 2 sockets. Today, the 2 sockets is the only available option in this instance. So from an Apex Cloud platform, it would be a 2 socket platform. It's just a recommendation from Microsoft for the full software stack. It requires some more from a compute standpoint. So it's 2 sockets, but the R660's 1U 2 socket platform. Again, the operating systems that are included as a part of the Premier solutions are only the Azure Local, which is also which is synonymous with Azure Stack HCI. So and it's the MC660 does support GPU. It is again a 1U platform. The MC760, which is based on the R760, the R760, which is obviously rack mount, but it's a 2U system that is 2 socket. and again, does support GPU too as well. Both of these systems are if you're familiar with the Dell PowerEdge, they're the most mainstream systems that Dell has, the most purchased nodes that are out there from a PowerEdge perspective. And it is still based on the 16th generation. Dell did launch the 17th generation. There will be a 17th generation refresh in the next 6 months. But right now, the 16th generation is the platform to go with from a value standpoint. It's the one that Dell's selling the most of. The 17G platform is still just kind of more of a it's been launched. It has some adoption, but really 16G, 16th generation is the prime platform that's out right now from a PowerEdge perspective. And the 660 and 760, most mainstream, most widely adopted systems that are out there from a Dell standpoint, and that's why that they chose these for the premier platform. So you do get the choice between the 1U and the 2U. Both are two socket platforms. Both have flexibilities from a storage standpoint, from a performance perspective, and Cordicate can definitely help you from a sizing standpoint. I'm happy to jump into and help from a sizing perspective to more accurately size from a policy-based resiliency, usable amount of storage capability to make sure we right size it specifically for your environment. There's a ton of different configurations from different networking capabilities, networking functionalities, but I'm certain if you do want to entertain or look at this type of solution, we can find a solution that meets your specific needs. And I would say from an Azure Stack standpoint, starts at just like VMware vSAN, starts at like a 2-node capability, all the way up to 16 nodes per cluster. But you could have multiple clusters and kind of extend it out beyond that and manage the multiple clusters all together in one. And then Dell also has the Microsoft Cloud 4000, the 500 or 4500, which is basically a ruggedized system. If anybody has any non-traditional, not inside of a data center, not inside of a satellite office, or a traditional closet, we're talking more like a manufacturing facility with like where there's sand, sawdust in the air, not AC controlled environments that require, fanless, ruggedized systems. This system is built for specifically that, for very much edge use cases that are outside of a traditional outside of a traditional data center, outside of a traditional satellite office, that is in kind of in harsh environments. And one of it's not an individual node. You can fit multiple nodes within the specific platform, and set up a cluster, and very very much into a tight 2U rack, either or could be put on a shelf too as well. A lot of different capabilities, or a lot of different ways you could deploy it. But if you did have rack, it is a 2U rack, or as they call a flex mount, which basically means you could put it in a lot of different places. And then the integrated system, which is the Ready node. Today they have from an availability standpoint, they have 2 nodes that are available, which is the AX760, again 2U. AX instead of MC is really the biggest difference in the nomenclature. But the 760 still means it's built on the R760 platform. So it's a 2U platform, which is 2-socket. A lot of different options from a configuration standpoint. But you still have a lot of flexibility with it. They do not presently have a 1U. I believe a 1U will be launching soon, but today it's from a Ready node standpoint, or from the integrated systems, there's the 2U platform. And they do have the 4000 still with the Edge platform, for again edge use cases outside of a traditional data center or satellite office. And finally, so Microsoft Azure today, from a hybrid services standpoint, to kind of if we talk about the VMware hybrid services, or the capability basically to kind of extend to multi-cloud, the Azure public cloud is global, and Azure on-premise can be extended to very much when you set up any of the virtual machines or services. They can be set up in multiple different environment, or multiple different countries, multiple different data centers. And they can be set up from a resiliency standpoint to kind of be replicated across multiple different availability zones. So, and from there, that's really it. Any questions? We'll leave some time for some Q&A.
Thanks, Scott. So before we get into that, just kind of a quick recap of some of the stuff that Scott was talking about. The goal here is there are HCI solutions built around Microsoft that operate and exist in a very similar fashion to what the HCI solutions were from VMware, even prior to the Broadcom acquisition. So I know we have a significant amount of customers on VxRail. I hope you understand the parity between some of those options and the Microsoft options. There is the ability that we can build something that is very similar to VxRail using Microsoft instead of VMware as the hypervisor, and still get a lot of the same kind of functionality, support, things that you've gotten used to from the Broadcom environment, up to and including if you want a single throat choke and you buy a solution that is based off of one of these Dell HCI solutions for Microsoft. We can call you as a customer, or we as a partner can call Microsoft to have one point of reference for all support issues. We don't have to have separate tickets with Microsoft, Dell, etc., which is kind of the reason why I think a lot of customers move to something like a VxRail or a hyperconverged solution in the first place. So I wanted to throw that out there as the first kind of summary. A big differentiator for the solutions that Scott presented is, if you are a heavy Microsoft shop and you're using Microsoft Azure, doing something like an Azure Stack on premises that is integrated with your Azure cloud environment essentially means that you're looking at your local data center as an Azure site. And so you can do things between those two sites the same way you would if it was an all cloud environment. And it's kind of uh, it's something that you won't even recognize that it's really on site versus in the cloud. You have a lot of the same features. You have access to the same marketplace. You have access to the same apps. All of that is kind of huge when you're talking about some of the cloud strategies that I know a lot of our customers and even Cordicate has talked to a lot of our customers about over the past couple of years. So I wanted to throw that out there as well. The other thing I'll throw out, which Scott did not mention, but is important to note, is that there is still the possibility of doing something like a Hyper-V cluster, like a Windows, server virtualization cluster that is not HCI. So if you want to buy nodes that are, purpose-built for Microsoft, which Arrow can help us with and Dell can help us with, and you still want to use traditional storage, that option still exists. And we do still have customers that are doing the traditional server switch storage architecture for VMware that for one reason or another, either HCI wasn't a fit for them, or they just couldn't do it for some reason. Maybe the storage requirements were out, way above and beyond what HCI was capable of. That is still an option, and that's an option that we can discuss as well. So I wanted to throw out those couple of ideas when it comes to Microsoft virtualization. And I know this topic was specifically around Microsoft HCI, but I wanted to throw out that kind of summary and make sure that everybody knows those options are available. Scott, we have a couple of questions, but before I go into them, do you have any feedback on anything I just said?
No, this is a very good topic. We try to condense it down, but Microsoft, the way everything aligns, Hyper-V could absolutely be a replacement for vSphere. Azure Stack HCI could be a replacement for vSAN. So if you have the vSAN deployed, the Azure Stack HCI could absolutely be just an on-premise virtual SAN hyper-converged solution. You don't have to have the hybrid services. And again, it can be consumed either as CapEx to the Windows operating system by itself, or from an Azure Stack HCI operating system as an ongoing consumption model. Can be consumed either way. And then from a networking perspective, the way the networking kind of aligns from a VMware perspective, which is what was NSX, NSXT, from a Microsoft Azure standpoint, it would be the software-defined networking, which is will be very similar to a lot of the capabilities you have from a security group, ACLs, ETC from a policy and networking standpoint, VNets. All of that could be extended to on-premise. So it very much lines up. You could either have completely on-premise, hybrid services, which would be in the VMware world, it would be the vRealize suite with like Orchestrator, utilizing the cloud orchestrator, or HCX from a migrate standpoint, or from a Azure perspective would be Azure migrate instead of HCX. From a cloud orchestrator in the VMware world to Azure, it's really the Azure Arc, right? Azure Arc, which is more the API integration that allows for API integration to Azure, and can be extended as a part of something I didn't mention. The Azure extended VMs can be extended to as well, and there are integrations into other public clouds. But really, for the scope of this conversation, I was really focused from an Azure perspective.
Absolutely. So
So
jumping into questions real quick, the first question was, what does the migration look like from a VMware solution to a Microsoft HCI solution? There are a couple of ways to do this, and Scott actually mentioned one, which is using Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate is available to migrate VMs to local Azure Stack solutions. And that is going to probably improve, I would expect, like significantly over the next couple of months. However, I would also say that Cordicate has several tools available, and up to and including tools that you may already own. There are ways of doing VMware migrations with Veeam. There are ways of doing VMware migrations with native Microsoft tools. There are ways of doing VMware migrations with third-party tools. And I think that we would pick and choose what the solution is that's going to be the most appropriate in order to migrate VMs from one environment to the other. I will say that in most cases, it's probably not a live migration. So there is outages that would have to be, planned, et cetera. But Cordicate has done so many migrations from on-premise physical to VMware, from VMware to cloud, from on-premise to cloud, in multiple different options that, ultimately we'll find the best solution in order to migrate the VMs from one platform to the other. It's not, I'm not going to say it's an easy button. Like there's going to be a planning that would have to take place, and some applications may be easier to move than others, especially something like SQL that may have integrated replication that would not require any downtime to move the VM. So, overall, if we were to get into one of these conversations, we would want to do an analysis of the environment and understand what applications are being used, what the downtime requests are for the applications, and make sure is that we can build a solution that would best support the business during any kind of like major infrastructure change. The next question that we got was, how does support compare from VMware HCI solution to a Microsoft HCI solution? Scott, I'll let you jump in on this one, but I'll just start off in saying that the idea is, and Scott kind of identified this already, that the Microsoft HCI solutions, especially when we're partnering with something like Dell Apex, are designed to be identical to the VMware HCI solution, something like VxRail, where it is one number to call for any problem. And digging deeper into that, the idea is that all of the software, hardware, firmware, everything that's involved in it is all kind of, if not necessarily pre-qualified, but all organized so that it is developed in a single solution, monitored by a single solution, and then you have one number to call for any problems. So the goal is to do kind of the same thing that VMware did from an HCI perspective, and that's what Dell and Microsoft are doing from a Microsoft HCI perspective. Scott, I don't know if you want to jump in and add anything to that.
I think you said it perfect, but I mean, again, it's designed either from a ready node perspective, the service tag and the routing SKU from your specific Power Edge ready node, or what is the integrated platform will route you to a specific queue that handles the whole stack from a Microsoft software and specifically from an Azure Stack ACI standpoint. So they are tech support that is focused specifically on that. From a Premier perspective, they take it to the next level from an automation perspective that allows for call home functionality and more of a proactive capability to manage the specific systems. And that's really the big difference between the two, but both go to a specific SKU or a specific queue that provides will provide you detailed maintenance on the full stack or detailed support on the full stack from both software and hardware for either the integrated system or Premier.
Perfect. And I'll throw one more thing in there because I know I also kind of extended this conversation past HCI. If you want to do a Hyper-V solution on Dell hardware with Dell storage, Dell switches, etc., which is something that we are perfectly capable of building, and we do have customers that are using that solution today, it would still be the same as or similar to what your VMware solution would be in the same respect, where you would still call Microsoft for Microsoft problems, Dell for Dell problems. But if we were to do a Dell infrastructure where it's Dell server, storage, and switches, you would have one throat to choke for infrastructure and one throat to choke for any software issues. Dell does offer enterprise solutions that would have one throat to choke for everything, including the hypervisor and the operating system. Those are very, very large solutions. And I know that what we're kind of focusing on is around HCI, which is more of an SMB, SME solution. So we can have separate conversations about that if anybody's interested. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that distinction. Scott, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you said it perfectly. Just again, we could, Dell has a lot of different solutions, and there are a ton of alternatives. It really depends on the specifics from a workload standpoint, what your specific environment, what's going to best fit your needs. And myself and the Cordicate team are here to help kind of right size the solutions. And Dell has a huge portfolio that we definitely didn't have enough time to talk about everything.
Exactly.
But everything from servers to networking to storage to data protection, there's a solution that's going to be correct for whatever your specific objective is from a business standpoint.
The last question on the list, and this will probably be the last question because we're running out of time here, is how many of the Azure networking features are available? Is it possible to do a firewall appliance, for example? The short answer is yes, especially if we're talking about the Azure stack that's integrated with the cloud and we're using Marketplace. Anything that's available in the Azure Marketplace, we could potentially run on premises, which would include virtual appliances from Cisco, Fortinet. I mean, I'm just throwing out a couple of big names there, but anything that's available in the marketplace could potentially be run on an Azure stack on premises if it's configured that way to integrate with the Azure cloud. So yes, those options are available, and I think Scott, you briefly talked about the software defined networking capabilities that are available in the on-premise environment as well. So, a lot of those features are available. A lot of them are parity to what VMware offers. They may be done a different way and through a different manufacturer because Microsoft relies on a bunch of third-party manufacturers to do things for them. But that doesn't mean that they're not available because it's available in the Azure Marketplace. It probably can run on premises.
Yeah, and specifically, if you're talking about the software-defined networking that's included as a part of the stack from a Microsoft standpoint within Azure Stack ACI OS, there's a lot of security features as far as like network security groups and VNets and specific policies that are a part of it. As far as the firewall goes, you would have to that would be a specific. The Azure firewall is additional service through Azure, through the Azure
Agreed.
Marketplace,
Yeah.
or you would have to utilize that service, and it would be an ongoing consumption model, just like you would if you consumed it through Azure Public Cloud.
All right, perfect.
Yep.
Guys, I want to thank Scott for his time. Great presentation, Scott. Thank you for everything. Everybody else that participated or will be, rewatching this video if you weren't able to join, but you're watching the recording, I want to say thank you as well. Once again, we will be in touch about the giveaway that we are doing, and if you do get a survey, we would appreciate any feedback, any responses, positive or negative. We want to make sure that we're delivering the kind of content that you guys want to see. So thank you, everybody. I hope you guys have a great day and take care.
Thanks, everyone.